very happy to welcome to the podium tonight. Let's welcome Matt.
Thank you. I get a hug.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I got all my things here. My name's Matt, and I'm an alcoholic. Okay, and we got the timer started. Welcome to our visitors from Phoenix, and welcome from Winslow. Wolfpack, good to see you. Oh! And you guys made it easy on me tonight with the chips, so congratulations, Pat, on 2 years. It's awesome, Patrick. I'm really proud of you. And on 15, I love your presence in the rooms. You have powerful recovery, and appreciate that. So I have a sobriety date. I was separated from alcohol on October 8th of 2015. I was separated from alcohol by a God that I was ambivalent about. I have a home group. It's the Tuesday night men's Wolfpack here in Flagstaff. We meet 7 o'clock on Tuesdays and 7 o'clock on Thursdays now as well. And I am what some people might call a big book thumper, which is not a bad thing, seeing as I've found that our program of recovery, I've found it in the first 164 pages of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm grateful to be sober today. And I'm absolutely certain that I wouldn't be standing up here today as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous if I hadn't gone through step 1 through 9 with another man who had gone through the steps himself, and today live in step 10, 11, and 12. I do not talk a whole lot about my drunkalog. I will, however, take you through my journey through the Big Book, my journey through the steps. I will tell you, though, that to at least identify that I can be found on page 21 in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm what the Big Book calls a real alcoholic. I'm definitely the Jekyll and Hyde. I'm practically normal in every way. Put alcohol in me for a day, and I become dangerously and disgustingly antisocial. When it comes to alcohol, I'm incredibly selfish and dishonest. If you get in the way of how I want to drink, I do not want you in my life, and I will simply push you out. Another reason that I don't talk too much about my drunk log is because it was one of the things that kept me out of the rooms for a long time. Because you guys had a problem, I didn't. You guys had more DUIs. You guys went to more institutions. You guys did more rehab time. You guys spent more time in jail. Fill in the blanks. You guys definitely had problems. We heard Justin. Justin definitely has a problem. Let's be honest. Justin's an alcoholic here. So, because I just wanted to try to be, through every form of self-deception and experimentation, I was trying to prove myself an exception to the rule. Therefore non-alcoholic, not an alcoholic. I will tell you that I'm not an alcoholic because like I've heard in the rooms before, I'm a round peg in a square hole. I just didn't fit in. There was trauma in my life. None of those things. I'll put it to you this way. I wear glasses today. I wasn't born with glasses. I didn't have to start wearing glasses until I was probably, maybe it was about 14 years ago, somewhere in my 30s. And I don't question why I have to wear glasses today, because I have the solution to the problem. I can't see my cell phone, and I can't see the faces in the back without the glasses on. I don't get into a whole lot of questions or, research and try to figure out why I can't see anymore. I have the solution, and now I can see fine. So I focus on the solution today, and I treat my alcoholism the same way. I focus on the solution. I don't try to figure out why. My mom still thinks it's her fault, and sometimes I mess with her and tell her that she's right, but, but that's not the case. I am an alcoholic because I have an alcoholic mind. I do not react the same way. I've found out later, of course, that I have an allergy. but that it's not just the allergy, that it centers in my mind, because if it were just the allergy, then I wouldn't be standing here talking to you today, because I have a milk allergy and I don't go to Milks Anonymous. I can stay away from milk and I don't have to have a 12-step program to do it, because I don't, want to spend all evening on the toilet, the consequences of my milk allergy are enough to keep me from it. But that's not the case with my alcoholism, because I have an alcoholic mind that will continue to tell me that it's going to be different this time, or there may be no thought at all, and I just pick up a drink. Whatever the case may be, I'm going to find some kind of trivial excuse to pick up a drink. So how I found my way into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, again, I push people out of my life that if you get in the way of how I want to drink. And my wife at the time, I was horrible. I was horrible to her. I was definitely verbally abusive. And when she walked out on me for the third time, because this time I got physically abusive, and you'd think that would have been enough for me to be like, okay, it's time for me to stop. Maybe we need to back this up. But no, it's going to be different this time. It's like, oh, I just got to lay off the hard stuff. Maybe if I just drink, beer during the week, and then I can drink some hard stuff on the weekend, or, maybe if I just drink, fine wines, and just maybe I'll just drink the stuff that comes in on all the wine memberships that I had up and down the coast of California, but I'm the kind of alcoholic that would enjoy those wines from up and down the coast from a number of different wineries, yet out in the garage, I have plastic bottles of vodka hidden, because that's my jam. Yeah. Or the kind of guy that when I would go out to eat with my friends or family or with my wife, I would make sure that their back was faced, that their backs were to the bar. So that anytime I got myself up to go to the bathroom, I could sit there and sip on a beer like a gentleman, right? But anytime I got up to go to the bathroom, I could make sure that the bartender hit me quick with like a double Stoli, straight up. And then I could sit back down and sip on my beer. Everyone probably wondered why I was going to the bathroom so often, but, so I knew after she had left, I wish I could say that I came into the rooms because I really wanted help. Really what I was trying to do is to get the heat off. What can I do to get her back? And I was lucky in that my place of business was filled with a number of recovered alcoholics. There were a lot of people who were in sobriety, and I knew this because some of them didn't really follow the whole attraction, not promotion thing. I had many, and it was clear too to a lot of my coworkers that I was an alcoholic because they witnessed me at company parties and events and, trips company trips to Vegas and that kind of thing. When I just, I'm dangerously and disgustingly antisocial. And, so I had a lot of people trying to 12-step me in that company. And I mean, I'm still with that company, and I just finished my 20th year there. And I only, and I've been sober since 2015. So I was not sober for a long time working at that company. I had a lot of people giving me big books and, and of course, most of those ended up in the garbage can. I just didn't have anything to do with them. And, I didn't want anything to do with that cult, people walking around the office. God is good. God is good. It's just like, get away, So, but I knew where to turn, because there were a handful of people, particularly the CEO of the company, who at the time probably had 30 years of sobriety. And I trusted this man and I looked up to him and he was a good friend. And so I walked into his office that day and, I had to get some courage. So before I went into his office, I took the walk down to the liquor store like I normally would and got a couple of little, airplane bottle blue Smirnoff 100 proof. By the way, if you drink out of an airplane bottle, you're probably an alcoholic, and if you're not on an airplane, okay, because normal people don't do that. If you're buying half pints or airplane bottles and you're not on an airplane, you're probably an alcoholic. Because that's through every form of self-deception and experimentation, I'm trying to prove myself not an alcoholic. And so I have to dose myself, So I get up some courage and I walk into his office and, I'm pretty emotional at this point because, I'm pretty sure she's gone forever. And, I was bawling and I told him, I said, Rick, I think I have a problem with alcohol. And this was really the first time where I kind of verbalized that. And he said, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? And I'm like, I need help. And so he linked me up with another guy in the company who was a little bit younger than me, and he had been around the rooms, but he was back around for a second or third go, and he maybe had a couple weeks. And his name was Josh, and he said, Josh is going to take you to a meeting tonight. And I said, well, tonight's not really going to work for me, but let's talk about it tomorrow, because I had one more drunk in me. And and that's just what I did. I had no plans. I had no excuse. I had planned, definitely wanted to drink again that night. And, however, the next day I did meet up with Josh, and we went to, it was a Thursday night. That was on October 8th. October 7th was when I was in my boss's office, telling him I needed help. And for whatever reason, for the longest time, I held October 7th as my sobriety date. In fact, probably 30, 45, 60 days, I took a few dirty chips because I was one day off. Because, man, in those first few days, that extra day meant something. For me to tell someone that I had a week instead of just 6 days, you guys know, like that extra 24 hours was everything. And then finally, when I got honest with myself and realized that the actual first day that I didn't have a drink was October 8th. So that's my sobriety date. So we went to a meeting that night. It was a young people's meeting. And I got sober at what it was like, I was 36, and I didn't feel very young. And it felt real cliquey, but I'm pretty sure, looking back, that I was also just trying to, again, I don't belong here. I don't fit in here. You guys are all different than me. I'm sure they weren't cliquey. I'm sure they were probably very friendly. I just didn't want anything to do with them. I will say though that the guy that was leading the meeting that night literally had "FU," tattooed across his forehead, which was, a little intimidating. And I'm like, this guy's got a problem. I'm looking at him like I'm looking at Justin, like this guy's got, But we went around it was a big meeting, and it was almost like big stadium style. And they went around the room and everybody introduced themselves. People were standing up, and some people were standing up and saying, I'm an alcoholic. Some people were standing up and saying, I'm an addict. And Josh was coaching me, and he's like, so I know you did drugs too. So he's like, you can say, my name's Matt. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an addict also. I'm like, okay, cool. I got this. So it comes to me. It's my turn. And I stand up and I say, hi, my name's Matt. I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and something happened to me that night. But it was the first time that I had said that out loud, where I said, my name is Matt, I'm an alcoholic. And it was in front of a group of people. And I didn't know it necessarily at the time, but something started to change. Now, the whole I'm an addict thing too, my sponsor later told me, he's like, Matt, that's like saying that I only eat vegetables and I'm a vegan. So he's like, just go ahead and stick with the I'm an alcoholic thing. I'm like, okay, my name's Matt, I'm an alcoholic. So another reason I went to that meeting, though, was because I heard that you guys sold literature there. And I wanted to make sure that I got myself one of the, the big shiny ones too, because she was still coming back to the house. And I needed to make sure that this was sitting on the counter somewhere, with the bookmark in, right, in a reasonably deep. So it looked like I was actually reading it, So, because look what I'm doing for you. I'm doing this for us, because I was still trying to get her back. But something cut through in that meeting that night. Most of it was just like blah 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 blah. I wasn't hearing much. I mean, I had been about 18 hours without a drink at this point, so I'm getting restless, irritable, discontent. Getting a little shaky, not feeling very comfortable in my skin. But what I heard was blah, 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 countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. And I heard that. Countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. I mean, and it still gives me chills to this day, because that was the first time that I heard something that was just like, wow, that's me, and that was one of those moments in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous where I found myself saying, yeah, me too. Me too. So I left the meeting. That's pretty much the only thing I remember hearing that night, because I was mostly looking at Jesse's tattoo on his forehead that said "FU," and I just wanted to make sure that I got my literature, which I did. And you guys wanted to give it to me for free, but I'm like, no, I pay my own way, So I made sure that I bought it, But I actually opened up the book that night because that countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people, it made me want to read more. And I got into the doctor's opinion and I started reading this. And I mean, it started making a little bit of sense to me. I mean, I really liked the way that it was, they were breaking it down because I could understand this concept of the allergy thing. This makes sense to me, you know? And then the idea that, but if it was just the allergy, then I wouldn't be having to go to meetings for it. So what is this thing that centers in my mind? And then it hit me, one of those lines. It said, these men were no longer drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving that was beyond their mental control. And that was like, bam, for me. I'm pretty sure I was hook, line, and sinker there. You know, I wanted to read more because it was the first time that someone had put into words exactly what was going on inside of me. And I couldn't explain that, you know, which, by the way, that line puts, kills the whole idea of triggers, okay? Because if I'm not drinking to escape, if I'm drinking to overcome a craving that's beyond my mental control, there's no such thing as a trigger, okay? Everything is, nothing is, anything is, you know? I have a craving that I'm trying to quench that's beyond my mental control, you know? So I continued to read more. Shortly after that meeting, I was able to find what later became my home group, the Monday Night Men's Stag in Simi Valley, California. And I'm super grateful that I found this meeting because it was, there was some hardcore old timer big book thumpers in there. You know, when I got into that meeting, it wasn't the kind of meeting where they're like, Matt, we're going to love you till you love yourself. You know, it wasn't that kind of meeting. You know, they told me that as it's found in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in the chapter Working with Others, like, you know, right out of the gate, I'm about a week sober and they're telling me, Matt, it's imperative that you put the welfare of others before you. You know, they said you've been selfish and self-centered your entire life, selfish and self-centered to the core. You've been taking your whole life. It's time for you to start giving back, you know, and I'm so grateful that I found those men. And that's where I found my sponsor, who was also a big book thumper, who in other meetings in that town, people would be like, look out for Mike. He's a big book thumper, you know? Yeah. But I'm so glad that I wanted what that man had. And, you know, and it wasn't because Mike shared an apartment with his son and, and he worked for Enterprise, taking cars from one location to another. I didn't want what he had because he was, some kind of big baller, wealthy, I wanted what he had because, man, he wore sobriety well. He wore it like a loose garment. That man lived in step 10, 11, and 12. And I didn't find out until later that about a year earlier, before he became my sponsor, his wife had passed away of cancer. And he was going through a really hard time. And he had to throw his arms back around Alcoholics Anonymous again because he knew that getting back into the book and getting back into working with others was the only thing that was going to save his butt. And here, I thought he was saving my life, and I didn't know that I was helping to save his too. And that is one thing that the book tells me to do as well. I am to present myself to you folks as a person who has recovered from alcoholism, and as a part of my own recovery, that I'm supposed to carry the message to you guys. So the way that my sponsor, because he is a big book thumper, we started from the cover page, which, by the way, says how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. There was a time, for whatever reason, there were some meetings in California where it was like bad to say recovered, where you couldn't say that you had recovered from alcoholism, even though it's mentioned in the book like 70 times in the 164 pages. But we started from the cover page and we started reading. He explained to me that from the cover page to page 59, that we were going to be basically going through step 1 and step 2 because they are not clearly written out. For anybody who hasn't picked up the book, you might want to, because again, the clear-cut directions are in here in the first 164 pages. But he told me that by the time we get to page 59, we should have come to these two conclusions here. Number one, that I needed to admit to myself that I was powerless to alcohol and that my life had become unmanageable, but that I also needed to come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. So I had to, what does it mean to be restored to sanity? Because I was hearing all different kinds of things in meetings. I had people who had lots of time from what they were saying. They had many years, and they would identify, like, my name is so and so, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm still insane. And I didn't understand this. I'm like, I don't want to be insane forever. And I think it was super confusing, because then they would talk about their alcoholic mind, and they would use this when they were referencing like their problems with buying too much stuff on Amazon, or the fact that they were like yelling at their kids, or the fact that they were late to work, or they were had road rage. That's my alcoholism. That's my alcoholic mind. And my sponsor showed me through in the first 59 pages that no, actually the big book spells out clearly what it means to be restored to sanity. So because we looked at what does it mean to be insane? And the book actually says it, clearly. It says, we don't know what else to call it, so we're going to call it plain. We're going to call it insanity. And what they were talking about was when Jim decided that it'd be a good idea to mix whiskey with milk, that he would be fine if he just mixed whiskey with milk. And for those of you who don't know, Jim's story starts out by saying, he was irritated. All went well for a while. But he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. He was now working for an auto dealership that he used to own, but he lost it because he's a drunk. And he decided to go to a spot in the country, a place he used to visit, right? He used to drink there, because he might find a prospect to sell a car to. And his wise idea was, oh, you know what? If I just mixed whiskey with milk, I'd be okay, right? It's going to be different this time. And so the book says, we don't know what else to call this. We're going to call it plain insanity. Another time that they're talking about the insanity is in Fred's story, right? When he's on a business trip, he's already lost everything, and he's finally got his family back. He's got his job back. He's been sober a couple months. He's been on business trips before, and it says it was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. Business went well for him. And then he walks across the hotel threshold, and like thought occurs to him, like, oh, you know what, a cocktail would be nice with dinner. And then boom, the rest, then it's like a blur for 2 weeks, right? He ends up back in New York, and the cab driver, somebody gets hit, it's a mess. And then he's like, well, I didn't even think about it. And they call that the mental blank spot. That's the alcoholic insanity. That's my alcoholic mind. It's going to be different this time. No thought at all. Mental blank spot, right? Or what happened with Bill when he was like in the bar, and he's like, he didn't know what, a drink came across him. He took it down and he like pounded on the bar, and he's like, what's the use anyway? And some people call that the effets, or in this case, in light of what always happened, a trivial excuse for a drink. That's my alcoholic insanity. So once I was clear on that, it made a lot more sense. Okay, that's what it means to be restored to sanity. There are some things that Alcoholics Anonymous can't fix, but what it means to be restored to sanity is it means I'm going to react sanely and normally when I am confronted with alcohol, which we live in a world with alcohol. I just came from an all-inclusive resort, which was amazing. And there was alcohol, like it was free too. And it was all in the room, and it was like everywhere, but I'm in this place of neutrality. And it talks about that too on page 84 and 85. It talks about the sanity returning. It talks about us reacting sanely and normally. That if tempted, we're going to recoil from it as if it's a hot flame. But we react sanely and normally, and that this comes automatically. This comes without us even really doing anything. That we're not fighting it. We're not avoiding it. We're just neutral to it. And what a great place to be. And I wish that when I first came into the rooms, that someone would have told me that like, you can be neutral to this. Because the book also tells us that any form of recovery that involves shielding the alcoholic from alcohol is doomed to failure. Because we live in this world where alcohol is all over the place, but to be in a place of neutrality. So I had to come to believe in a power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. So by the time we got to, we read through chapter 2 and chapter 3, that's where Fred and Bill's story were. And we got to the chapter of the agnostics. And I told my sponsor, well, I'm not an agnostic, so we don't need to read this chapter. he's like, well, we're going to read it anyway. We're going to read it anyway. Again, clear cut directions. So we continue through, and I mean, to this day now, it's one of my favorite chapters. I mean, there's some wonderful nuggets in there. And again, the way that we walk through the steps is when the book told us to write, we wrote. When the book told me to pray, we prayed. By the time we reached page 59, and it asked me, it said, being convinced we are at step 3, right? So I had to look at it at that point and say, well, am I, have I admitted myself that I'm powerless over alcohol and my life had become unmanageable? Do I believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity? And if the answer is yes to that, then let's move on to step 3. I believe that the original manuscript said that if, being convinced we're at step 3, if you're not, go back and read it again, and if you're still not, throw it away. I think is what it said. And I believe that they said that's too harsh. We have to change that, Bill. We want to keep people around. So we got to step 3 and right then and there, I mean, we didn't think about it, for a long period of time. My sponsor didn't say, okay, wait a month, we hit our knees. And we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. We said the 3rd step prayer was as it was in the book. Other than it being like kind of awkward and I was like looking around to see who was watching, I'd like to tell you that I had like some kind of profound white light experience, but I did not. Again, it was more awkward than anything else, but right in the book, and my sponsor pointed out, he said, look, it says though that this will have little lasting effect unless followed by immediate action. So again, we didn't just sit on it. We moved right into step 4. And he said, look, this is what we can do. Step 4 is making a searching and fearless inventory, right? He said, this can take you 2 or 3 hours, or it can take you 2 or 3 hours in a day, or it can take you 2 or 3 hours in a week, or it can take you 2 or 3 hours in a year. In other words, it's just going to take you 2 or 3 hours. So just do it, and I got to work and I did it, And he showed me how, it was just lined up in the book. We did, the first column that was the easy one, right? My grudge list. I'm mad at you. I don't like you, because everybody had a problem with, and then the other easy part was like, oh, what did they do? Well, like, give me another piece of paper. What did they do? And then what did it affect? But then when I had to go in column 4 and I had to start looking at like, what was my part in it? This is when things began to change. And I definitely needed my sponsor's help for this. And the way that he explained it was great. Cause he knew that I was simple, right? But, he used to grow tomato plants. And he said, Matt, it's like this whole process is like a tomato worm. And he said, a tomato worm looks just like the leaf on a tomato plant. He's like, you cannot find the tomato worm unless you follow the trail of poop that the tomato worm leaves. And then you can find it. And he's like, so what this is we are the trail of poop, right? Is all the wreckage I've caused in the past, all the harm, everyone that I've harmed. And then the tomato worm is these defects of character that we're looking for. We're looking for the defects of character, the fear, the resentment, the anger, the dishonesty, all these things, which he's like, by the way, we all share them, to varying degrees, but we're all sharing the same defects of character. And once I got clear on that, it made the 5th step a lot easier, admitting to myself, to God, and another human being, the exact nature of my wrongs. I mean, I had no problem sharing my whole life story with my sponsor. It was a relief. And again, we didn't waste any time on it. And just as the book instructed us, he said, okay, Matt, now this next part is between you and God. Step 6 and 7, I can't go with you on this one. So we looked in the book, and the next paragraph said that we're to take the book down. We're to review the 5 steps that we just went through. Make sure we didn't, skip anything. Make sure that we were thorough and honest on everything. And then Matt, he said, you're fully aware now of your defects of character. You need to become willing to let God remove those. And then you need to ask God to remove them. But that's between you and God, And the very next day we were on step 8. We didn't do it, step 6 in June and step 7 in July and we were right into step 8, and it was time to make that list of all the people that I had harmed. And he's like, most of the people that and by the way, don't burn your 4th step list, because I did. That was not sponsor direction. It felt really good, but luckily I was able to remember it. He's like, so where's your 4th step? I'm like, oh, I burnt that shit. And he's like, okay, well, you're going to need to, recall, because most of those people are going to end up on your 8th step. But then there were some people that didn't end up on the resentment list that were definitely going to end up on my 8th step. And I was back and forth with a few things. And he's like, Matt, it's like, right now we're just making the list and becoming willing to make amends to them, so put your dead father on there, put the people on there that you may never get a chance to see, put the people whose names you can't even remember. These are just, we're making a list and we're becoming willing to make amends to them all, and so I did that. And then he also instructed me that I didn't need to write next to each name, like whether I was going to be writing a letter to that person or making a phone call, because he said made a direct amends. And he said direct amends is in person whenever we can. He's like, you're not getting off that easy. You're going to make a direct amends when you can. And I have stories that still continue on the ninth step. Amazing stories. One that I can share briefly is just the amends that I did with my ex-wife. Not the first one, because the first one was against sponsor direction. It was probably in the first 60 days of sobriety, and I hadn't done any of the steps yet. I had her meet me at a Starbucks parking lot, and I hopped out, and I'm like, I'm in a 12-step program of recovery, and as part of my program, I have to clean up the wreckage of my past, and I am sorry for choosing alcohol over our marriage. And she's just like, bawling and like, I forgive you. And I'm like, that's not what this is about, And then I'm pretty sure I jumped in the car after that and I was gone, Okay, that was the wrong way to do it. And I got sick about that, And you know how it is when you start hearing in meetings, you start hearing people are bringing up the ninth step often, and and then I'm seeing like the white RAV4 that she used to drive all over town. It wasn't her car, but it was everyone had that car. I'm just like getting sick over this. And then I heard people in meetings sharing, like saying, yeah. And then I asked, was it, is there anything I can do? What else can I do to make it right? Am I leaving anything out? And I'm like, oh yeah, I missed out on a lot. I forgot a lot of those things. So I finally, when I did get a chance to reconnect with her and I did it right. So, because my sponsor explained to me, he said, it's like doing a proper amends is like this. He's like, imagine that you have a neighbor and you've been throwing garbage in his yard for years. A proper amends is going over to the neighbor's yard, picking up the garbage, knocking on the door, taking the garbage to his door and saying, this garbage that I threw in your yard, it was wrong of me to throw this garbage in your yard. You didn't deserve for me to throw this garbage in your yard. Other than me cleaning all this crap up that I've thrown in your yard, is there anything else I can do to make it right? And is there anything that I've done that I'm not aware of that I need to make right? And when I had a chance to have that conversation with her, it was so much more powerful for the both of us. Now, again, my sponsor made it quite clear that this ninth step is not, and anybody who tells it's about you, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about making right what was wrong. They deserve it. We may benefit from it, but they deserve it. So don't sit on those. And, and when I asked, is there anything I could do to make it right? And I was prepared to accept anything at that point. And she just said, wherever we end up, I just want us to be friends, no matter where we're at in life. And to this day, she's one of my best friends, and it's just, and there's so many powerful, amends that one leads to another and another. And, it's just a miracle of this program. And, my sponsor made it clear that when in doing step 4 and 5 and 8 and 9 thoroughly, that I would never have to do it again, that I wouldn't be doing an annual 4th step, because he said at some point you have to stop thinking about yourself. At some point you have to stop writing about yourself. At some point you have to get out there and carry the message. At some point you have to start thinking of other people. And if I'm living in step 10, you don't need to do another step 4. Because when I got to step 10, it showed me that, and at first when I was looking at step 10, as it appears on the board here, which just says continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That makes it sound like it's just like when I step on someone's toes, I got to make it right. That's not what it says in the book, though. It's all the manifestations of self. When fear crops up, when dishonesty crops up, when anger crops up, most of the amends, most of the 10th step that I have to do today have nothing to do with stepping on other people's toes. It has to do with me being in fear. And I got to remember that there's a formula for that. Right, Patrick? It's in the book. And they drill it into us again and again and again. When these manifestations of self crop up, I tell somebody about it. I ask God to remove it. And I turn my thoughts to someone I can help. Now, if I've harmed somebody in the process, yes, I make an amends promptly. I heard people in, early sobriety who are like, oh, I got to do a 10 step on that tonight. No, you do a 10 step now. The 10 step is now. It says immediately. Ask God to remove it. Turn your thoughts to somebody who can help. Tell somebody about it now. We write about it at night. We in our 11th step is when I look at the day and, oh, maybe I forgot that one thing. Okay, now I need to do a 10 step about it. And I mean, the only thing, I think the most important thing about the 11th step, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, right? That's going to look different for all of us. The way that I seek God is different today than the way that I sought God when I first started this. The conception that I have of God, and by the way, when I speak of God, like with what the book tells us, I mean your conception of God, but mine's changed. I think the only wrong way to do 11 is to not do it. The only wrong way to do 11 is to not seek. I'm hungry spiritually. I want to read all different kinds of books. And the big book encourages us. It even says, be quick to see where religious people are right. They got a lot of great literature, So whatever that looks like for you, it changes for me because my prayer and meditation that I would do in the morning, it turned so robotic. It was just like another thing I wanted to check off the list where it didn't mean anything anymore. And so sometimes I just have to sit and listen to some spiritual music, or part of my meditation these days is doing a cold plunge each morning. Whatever it looks like for you, you've got to seek. And that's what my sponsor drilled into me is that I can't tell you how to do this. Even the book says we can be vague about this subject, but we'll offer some suggestions here. But there's no real wrong way to do it. In my experience, it's just the only wrong way is to not seek. So I continue to try to seek today. And I'm sure that, it'll probably look different, a month, 2 months from now than it does right now for me. Because for me, I have to keep changing it up because as soon as I become stagnant, as soon as it's just another thing I check off the list, it doesn't mean anything anymore, And then I think the biggest thing that my sponsor taught me through his actions was carrying the message. And, as a result, as the result, we have a spiritual awakening and not a result. It's the only, it is the result. Again, Alcoholics Anonymous can't solve everything, but man, I mean, it certainly brought me to this place of neutrality. It removed the obsession that I have. And today I get to be free of that. And now I get to carry that message to other alcoholics because I firmly believe what it talks about in the beginning of chapter 7, where nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking than intensive work with another alcoholic. It says it works when all else fails, ensure immunity. It works when all else fails. Like these are powerful words, and that's been my experience. And if you're sitting there and maybe you're not sponsoring people, it doesn't matter. Even you working with your sponsor is intensive work with another alcoholic. You just talking with somebody before or after the meeting is intensive work with another alcoholic. Picking up a service commitment is intensive work with other alcoholics. There are other ways that we can carry the message other than just sponsoring people. Obviously, that's the ultimate goal, is to carry this message. And I mean, I've got a beautiful life today. It didn't, I didn't remarry. We didn't get back together with my ex-wife, right? But she's one of my best friends. But I did remarry, back in October of 2022. She's a normie, and again, like I said, I just came back from an all-inclusive resort. We had a late honeymoon and I got to be there completely neutral to alcohol. I don't have to avoid it. I'm not afraid of it. I can have, she has it in the house. I still don't understand, that she drinks a half a glass of wine and is done. But, I guess that means that I qualify for this program, But today my life is full. It's filled with, all of my dear friends are members of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not to say that I don't have, normal people that I'm friends with too. But the fellowship, has become a huge part of my life. To be able to see other people get sober around me and if I can encourage anything, one of the greatest things I think my sponsor did for me was take me on travel meetings. Every Wednesday and Thursday, we would literally almost like take a dart and throw it at a wall. And if it wasn't within a 100-mile radius of where we were at, we would just go to a different meeting in some other town, just pop in. And then slowly but surely, my AA started to grow. And then as I traveled, and then I started looking forward to like finding the meetings at the places that I was going to be vacationing. And then AA continued to grow. So, I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep seeking God. I'm going to keep sponsoring guys. I'm going to stay in the big book. If you're not in a big book study, get in one. And, thank you for letting me share. You guys are great.